All right. We're here for another episode of Union or Bust. I'm Chris Lopez, your union brother on TikTok, Instagram, all the platforms. And I guess when you mix high-octane energy drinks with organizing, you do get Organizing Monster.
Hey, everybody. Juan Perez here, Organizing Monster on all the platforms. And Chris, today's a special day. We got a special guest, and I want to introduce him right off the bat. So how about we just go with it? We have Steve Gutierrez. He's a business representative and organizer for the National Federation of Federal Employees, right?
Yes, sir.
Firefighters.
Firefighters, federal employees specifically.
Right, there you go. So, hey, Steve, so real quick, just introduce yourself. What do you do? What's going on with that local? And a quick background of what's going on.
Yeah, so Steve Gutierrez, like I said, I'm National Business Rep for NFFE. Which is short for National Federation of Federal Employees, so I'll just call it NFFE. It's easier. So my job right now is to coordinate and support locals across the Western Territory. We represent federal employees across the nation, up to almost 100,000, excuse me. And right now we represent Forest Service, DOD, Veterans Affairs, Passports, HUD, and Bureau of Reclamation. And many more.
Right. So real quick, like I know you just mentioned a bunch of names and titles and job categories, but what do you specifically do? Like, what are you specifically working on right now, campaign-wise?
Right. So right now, what we're working on is federal wildland firefighter pay parity.
And what does that mean?
So essentially, right now, federal wildland firefighters start off about $15 an hour.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's less than minimum wage in California, by the way.
Yeah, they start about $15 an hour across this nation, and right now there was some money allocated in the bipartisan infrastructure bill for 5 years, $500 million. It's running out. It only lasted a year and a half, and it ends on September 30th. So we're trying to prevent this fiscal pay cliff. We have a bill that's in the Senate, is passed through committee, and we have a bill of the same mirror-like language also in the House, and it's in committee right now.
You know, you were rank and file before, right? And you work for the union full time right now.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And but you were a hot shot, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I always see all if you Google hot shot and all that stuff, there's a lot of things come up. What does a hot shot do?
Right. So hot shots are, well, first off, wildland firefighters, the job hasn't changed too much in the past 100 years. They're your forgotten first responders. Okay. These folks are up on the hills working back-breaking hours, carrying 45 pounds or plus chainsaws in the heat, carrying hose, chainsaws, like I said, hand tools, directing helicopters and air retardant ships. It is crazy. So hotshots specifically are a group of 20 or 25 plus members right now at the moment that are a national resource. They respond to wildland fires. They also respond to natural disasters, hurricanes. They did the shuttle response. They were actually part of the whole response to 9/11 after that. They were the first ones to go off to help with the 9/11 response. So right now, hotshots, they go and try to manage the incident that is escalating as much as it is. So they're trying to lower the escalation, create some kind of incident command structure, some type of order to the chaos. So that means they can sometimes be working all together. They can split up. They can have someone that manages the entire fire, or they can do everything together. They can send off one or two people. They can fall trees. They can burn, set prescribed fires. They can burn out fires. They cut hand line. And if you're not sure what hand line is essentially fires don't go out with water all the time. Sometimes the fires are so intense that you can't do it with water. So we have to take a step back a little bit more and then create a fuel break. And essentially you have guys on chainsaws creating 10 feet of cut with chainsaws, and then you have other folks part of the crew that are creating 2 feet of hand line. And that fuel separation slows wildfires. Like, water can't always go up steep hills because of just physics.
Holy cow.
Damn, how do they... We're just organizers and reps here, but that sounds like a
You risk your lives.
Yeah, it's pretty dangerous. It's pretty dangerous. It's definitely under-recognized, but there's a lot of really good, passionate, highly skilled, highly trained people doing this job day in and day out.
You did that?
Yes, yeah.
For how long?
I was a hot shot for approximately 10 years. Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then I left the hot shots, and I went to go work on a fire engine, right? So our fire engines here locally here in California, we respond to traffic collisions, we respond to medical aids, search and rescue, vehicle fires, all up and down California. We're trained and we have turnouts, just like a municipal firefighter. We do the same exact stuff. The only thing we don't do is go into a structure to go fight fire. That's the main difference.
And there's no wage parity, like.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So up until President Biden's infrastructure law that came to fruition, we were still considered forestry technicians, not even firefighters. So we got a position description in there to change our position description to actual wildland firefighter.
You're talking about chainsaws, and you're getting the trees down, getting the fuel, and to using physics and they weren't considering you firefighters?
No.
Holy
So
cow.
it's been a forestry technician for the past, I don't know, 40 years, 50 years,
years.
probably more than that. Longer than I've been around. So I've always been considered a forestry technician.
And real quick, I'm still for average Joes and Janes.
Sure.
What's the average day for a firefighter in the field? What's the average day like?
On a
What is
fire?
it? For average day, average month.
Right,
What are
so-
the current common issues that they face?
So right now, so there's different types of wildland firefighters. There's wildland firefighters on engines.
Right.
There's wildland firefighters that are part of hotshot crews. There's wildland firefighters that are called smoke jumpers. And those smoke jumpers, they jump out of a perfectly good airplane, and they jump into remote areas where there isn't any roads, and they fight fire by themselves.
Whoa.
So there's those things there. But get back to your question, it drastically varies depending on what resource you're assigned to. So say if on an engine, right, typically you're going to go through your morning checks in the morning, you're going to do some training, some physical training, and then you're going to go and maybe go do some fuels work in the day to start doing all these, we have a lot of fuels projects. Fuels projects lower the intensity from big fires, and we create little fires, right? We want to lower the amount of fuel loading because that lowers the amount of potential for rapid fire growth. But if you're assigned to a fire or an incident, as we would call it, you get there, and essentially the briefing starts at probably 6 in the morning. You get some breakfast, you go to briefing, then you drive out to wherever the work site is, and essentially when a fire starts, you're going to go and try to get anchor it first, and then start flanking it until you can get all the way around it. That's how we put out fires safely, right? So, but the world isn't flat. So it goes up and down and up and down. There's ridges, ravines, rivers, and sometimes it's not always the safest place. So we have to look and use topographic features to our benefit and to our advantage to keep our guys safe. Sometimes we use bulldozers to do the work, but sometimes the hills are so steep, bulldozers can't get in there. And that's where hot shots and hand crews get in there, and they go and do this hard backbreaking work. And they work for 16 hours a day, so from 6 to 10, but you get back at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, you eat some dinner, and you knock right out. You don't even take a shower, right? And you're out in the middle of nowhere. So from 6 to 10, that's your hours of work. After that, you're not getting paid to sleep on the ground in the middle of nowhere. You're sleeping in your sleeping bag, in ash, sometimes in a lot of smoke. It's very cold. Sometimes, I've frozen my butt off on more fires than I have overheated on fires. There's definitely that kind of thing. But it's definitely a live out of a suitcase thing for the summer. But with the way things are going now in our world, it's becoming a year-long thing. We have fire years now. A typical season when I started working on crews was, on a hotshot crew, 750 hours of overtime was like a really good season. And now crews are getting 1,000 to almost 1,500 in one 6 to 7 month period of overtime, not their base hours, overtime.
Yeah, it's crazy. Thinking, fire. There's this I don't want to call it a stereotype, but the fire truck. It's not that. It's just you're talking about bulldozers. You're talking about chainsaws. You're talking about all these different things that are going on that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
And you being a hot shot, and then you have the smoke jumpers jumping out. I mean, this is...
Yeah, no, it's crazy. But, okay, let's go back to the pay.
Oh.
I mean, $15 an hour.
And that's just recently when President Biden made it official, like no firefighter is going to work under $15 an hour. The federal minimum wage is like, what is it, $7.25?
Yeah.
So we're considering everybody.
Because you guys are federal employees.
That's correct.
Okay. So you fall under the federal minimum wage, which is $7.25.
Yeah, the federal minimum wage, but there's also locality pay. And locality helps out a little bit, but it's not the best.
Like in California, it's...
Yeah, so you get a locality pay in certain areas of California, but like even with the locality pay included, say specifically like places like Santa Barbara or Tahoe, tourist areas, no matter what, you ain't going to afford no house in like Lake Tahoe. But I got to go to work there.
I mean, $15 an hour, dude. Like I've said it, like I don't even know what I would be doing if I made $20 or less.
This is really
like that's
right. So right now, like with the bipartisan infrastructure bill about to expire for the firefighters right now, they're going to lose 50% or $20,000 of their pay. So that equates, if it doesn't get passed renewed by September 30th.
Okay.
Right. So that's about $750 extra. That's crazy.
It is.
Who can not? I can't afford that.
Well, I can't even afford $15 an hour.
Things are going. That's the thing. There's so many problems in the world, and that's why we have this podcast. Because there's a lot of distractions. People want to distract you, social issues, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's kitchen table economics. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. I always say that. People are having trouble paying their rent. They're having trouble paying their electric bill. People are in collections, or do they have health care? It's like we have to take... Right now is the time for having labor podcasts because we can put a spotlight on what's going on. It's ridiculous. I was so pissed. I didn't even know this, but I'm a resident of Chula Vista, and there's wage parity issues between the police officers and firefighters. It's like it's all public safety, and it's like everyone's risking their lives. I'm sure it's very stressful.
And see, right now the thing is there is parity between there's differences drastically between federal employees, then there's state and municipality firefighters, and then there's contract firefighting agencies. And no matter what, here's the thing. The taxpayer is still going to pay for it no matter what. The taxpayer is still going to pay for it. So they may pay me $15. They may pay another state or municipality 3 to 4 times more, and then they're going to pay a contract fire agency just as much. So one example, what will happen is if there's not any federal resources there to go and take care of the fire, right, you'll send in and call in a municipal agency to back that up, right? That's just what the government does. The government doesn't stop, keeps rolling, right? So they'll bring those folks in there. So like I said before, they get paid from 6 to 10 municipal firefighters. A lot of them, no offense to them, they've got a great contract. They've gotten what we call portal to portal. So they get paid 24 hours a day until they get back, no matter what, right? So then that equates to a lot more overtime hours, a lot more pay. On top of that, then not only is the government paying for them to come in to fight the fire, they're paying for their backfill at their station too. So you're paying for 2 firefighters, not just 1.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So,
it's
real
crazy.
quick, like, why do you think you deserve higher pay? What's going on with the firefighters? Like, I know, we know, but... I mean, maybe some of our listeners don't know. So what does a firefighter go through? Like, what are the normal, common issues facing firefighters? Yeah,
so, I mean, the biggest thing is wildland firefighters deserve the same respect that any other, like, public service employee does get right now. And they're the most underrepresented right now. There's so many wildland firefighters that I know that are personally living out of their cars. It's shameful that the government is trying to be a role model, in which they should be, right? And that their own employees can't even afford to put food on the table. And I think that's like a defining like baseline foundation. Like if you can't afford to put food on the table and afford rent to begin with, or even drive to the remote location where you have to work, how is this a thing? Like how is that fair to that person? You know, why would they ever want to trust the government or why you can't stop them from leaving, right? And right now we're losing wildland firefighters left and right. We expect if this bill doesn't get passed or this pay cliff happens, we're expecting 30 to 50% to leave, right? And
where are they going to go?
They're going to go work for state municipal departments, or in other states, what they're going to do is go and do completely other jobs. And there we go. The government just invested all that training and time and like resources into these people that are highly skilled, all to be lost to go to another agency or another career.
I know, like...
No, I was going to say that, you know, you're talking about people living out of their cars. I mean, there's fundamental necessities of human life.
Yeah.
You know, food, drink, shelter,
Safety.
Safety needs.
I'll tell you one story. There is a hotshot crew that is out there that lives in a tourist community. They all live out of their cars, and they had to bargain and negotiate to get a porta potty at the park that they're living in just to relieve themselves.
I mean,
It's pretty sad.
honestly, like, you've watched the episodes, you watch the podcast, and you kind of know where politics lie. We have millions and millions and billions of dollars for war, but we can't have anything for, like, people that live here in the States. And that's kind of crazy how... Why don't we just take care of... it's a no-brainer. Why don't we just take care of the firefighters? Like,
Right.
I don't get it. Like, why is it a no-brainer? Why is it hard to push this that you're trying to push?
Right. So the big thing with federal employees and federal unions, as some may or may not understand, is we can't negotiate pay. That's a huge thing. We can't. Who's our employer? The U.S. government's our employer, and the only way to get things done is an act of Congress. So we have to go out there and lobby, especially like myself. I go out to lobby to D.C. along with many other wildland firefighters out there that are trying to actively get this passed. And that's literally the biggest change for like all federal employees across this nation. The biggest thing that they can do is get Congress to go and act on their behalf. There's several bills other than just ours that'll help out federal employees across this nation to get them paid correctly. They're like 30% underpaid compared to the private sector. And we want to keep them, and then people complain like, oh, how come passports aren't being processed correctly? Well, we can't even keep people because they can't afford a living, right? Just basic necessities that all the taxpayers pay for. Like, we need to invest in our own infrastructure and our own federal employees as a role model for the government. And the president's fully backed us up. He's fully backed us up, and since Biden's been in place, it's the most pro-labor administration we've ever experienced. And he fully has our back 100%. We've spoken with Secretary of Agriculture. We've spoken with the Secretary of Labor. And the biggest thing they can say to us is we need to go up on the Hill and lobby.
Congress has the power of the purse.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. They just need to figure out what day of the week it is, and then we can all get everything together.
Exactly.
And get some stuff done.
So, like, okay, I get it. I get all the issues, but... for a normal person to understand what a firefighter goes through, we talked about this before this podcast shoot. I was in the Marines, and we have a firefighter friend that's been on the podcast, and we talk about the issues that they face here in Chula Vista. They face suicide.
Yeah.
They face cancer rates at a higher rate than normal people, or like non-firefighters.
Yeah.
Is that the same stuff going on with your firefighters?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that hasn't been researched. I wish it was, and guys are starting to get more involved with it. Thank goodness that they are getting involved with it. One of the biggest things that we did through the union is use our connections that we have through the Department of Labor and through OWCP is to get policy change where now presumptive cancers for wildland firefighters are covered. And if you don't know, you will know when you see and start looking for wildland firefighters under GoFundMes. It's unfortunate, but they're going to reach out to there because they're getting cancer in such high rates that they can't afford it. They just can't afford it. And the public's, thank goodness, is backing them up. But like I said, if we're going to be a role model for all employment across this country, that's the way to do it. And thank goodness, like OWCP has had our back this whole time to get this policy changed, change some people's lives across this nation. Like you said, you mentioned as well, suicide, mental health issues, it all comes along with it. Like the overwork, you're working, like I said, 1,000 hours. what that equates to almost another 6 months on top of your normal like year of working. So you worked like a year and a half within a year itself. Like that ends up being a lot over time.
Yeah. So speaking of suicide and cancer, I know we didn't talk about this, but like, what's the worst story you've heard a firefighter go through or yourself? I know normally maybe we don't want to ask that question, but I just think people need to know what you guys go through. Like with our friend Daryl, he was telling us when we brought him on to the podcast that like when we brought him on a few months back, he had went to a house, responded, and he had to pull like a kid out. Yeah, that just got burned alive. Right. And then my response is like, how the fuck do you deal with that? Like that. There, you just can't. You just you're traumatized for the rest of your life. Right. So to me, it's more like acknowledging the shit that you guys go through. Right. But paying you guys accordingly. Yeah. Otherwise, it's like we don't really care.
No, you're 100% correct. I mean, you do see a lot of fatality, not only just like amongst firefighters. You see a lot of like sadness within communities when their homes are burnt or people die within communities, especially like the Camp Fire. They lost 86 people there, and look at this Maui thing with like wildland firefighters responding to that. Like you're just seeing a lot of devastation and sadness. You also see like traffic collisions where people are, they do die. Things happen like that, right? Or you see like your best friend that just got hit by a tree, right? And you're the first responder to help him out, right? That's like a big deal. Those kind of things definitely resonate with a lot of folks, and you just don't know, unfortunately. Like, we've signed up and we've taken an oath. When it's your day, and we're going to try to mitigate everything as possible. And one thing I like to go back to is we don't take risks. We manage them, and no, everybody wants to go home. I don't want to die over someone's home or some bushes or a fire that was there before me. And I definitely want to retire, and I know every one of these single men and women that are up on the Hill definitely want to go home and enjoy their retirement that they're working so hard for. But you see a lot of that stuff, and seeing it over and over again, definitely, it does take a toll on you. Luckily, like, there's a huge brotherhood that we do reach out to within each other, within, like, hotshot crews or smoke jumpers and stuff like that. But it definitely needs to be brought up to a higher level of an outlet for folks or clinicians or something like that. And I hope to bring up something like that through the union and create some type of process to help these guys decompress and not like resort to bad things, in, like drinking and stuff like that. Like that's not the outlet you want to do. You want to figure this out. I had an incident myself where I was involved in a burnover, and essentially they brought the union that I was part of at the time, brought in clinicians to help us discuss our feelings and get through that and work through that. And it wasn't even me I was affected around it, but the two guys that were burned up, like they're hurt for the rest of their life. Their whole life has changed, and like, how are we going to be there for them after the accidents happen? They're living, but how are we going to take care of them for the rest of their life? That's like the biggest component of it, is like it doesn't just end after the accidents happened. It keeps following you over and over.
Yeah,
again.
and like speaking, like, because I told you I was in the Marines, I'm a veteran, and I talked to you and Ricardo about this. But when we get deployed, they create this. Yeah. We create what we are. Yeah. Like they create this, the boot camp, the training, and then we get deployed and have these expectations. And then when we come back, they know what's going to happen when we come back. And then if they stop taking care of us when we come back, that's fucked up. Just like firefighters, like they expect you to go fight something and save a kid and burning and people are dying. Right. What do they expect happens afterwards? Why aren't we taking care of people when we know it happens? Yeah. Like that's what we're preparing you for, is to be traumatized.
Right. And in all honesty, like, it's come up in the most recent years where like there's some action on it, but it's mostly grassroots level. I know the agencies are trying to do something, but in all honesty, like, it's not enough. But I hope to change that with my voice in the union, my voice being able to take it from the bottom level all the way to the top and share those stories or share those ideas and not get shot down just because we don't have money for it Like I can take that to the national level.
And that's we have this sign here, solidarity, and it's like that's what's holding everything together right now. It's about all of us coming together, giving people the platform they need,
right,
to say, hey, this is fucked up.
Right.
I mean, we need, because I always say this example, like the grass. Like if you see like all the blades of grass, ever seen the wind kind of blowing with them, and every one of them makes a sound.
Right.
Every single, but we don't listen to every single blade of grass. But if we did, the sound would be deafening. But those are all the problems of the world.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like if you want to solve the problems right now, most of them in the world can be solved with the labor movement.
Yeah.
Raising the standard of living, give people the opportunity to, support themselves. Right. I mean, I'm sure you guys aren't asking for new cars, but you're asking not to live in your cars.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation. And sometimes things get drowned out. And I think different political circles, they they use it's a kind of distraction. Hey, we don't want you to, no, they can't be talking about kitchen table economics, the labor movement, can't be talking about that. They'll talk about something else.
Right.
But when you got to just put it out in their face, and that's what this podcast is about, exposing like the injustices of the world.
So what are you asking of people?
So right now, what we're asking is, we have this deadline of September 30th, the fiscal pay cliff, where the budget runs out. We're asking people to support the Wildland Firefighter Paycheck Protection Act of 2023. It's on the Senate side and it's on the House side. We need folks to write their members of Congress, their congressional leaders, and say, hey, we support this. They can go to NFFE, NFFE.org, and you'll see a press release there where they can sign our action newsletter. That would be the hugest thing to get folks to sign on board on that and support us. Because honestly, tweeting and resharing and all that stuff isn't going to make a difference unless we get Congress to act, and they have to do it. And we have bipartisan support. I'm not going to ever say that. Like, everybody does support us, like you're saying. It's just we need to get it across the line sooner, because the day October 1st comes around and that's gone, we're going to lose folks. So
what does that mean? If it doesn't go through, what does that mean?
So if it doesn't go through, firefighters stand to lose $750 every 2 weeks and go back to like old levels of what they were getting paid, right? So how can you afford that? That's an extra, if you think about it, for a month, that's like $1,400. That's like rent.
So are you only asking to extend what already exists?
No. So what we're trying to do is make it permanent. We're trying to make it permanent. So right now, the bill is going to make this permanent. It's going to create the pay scale that we currently have, and it's going to set a foundation to work up from there. They're not even getting a raise from this. They're keeping what they have, and it's not even the best. We know that it's not perfect, but we have to do something. I'm not going to get another bill in passed through Congress, faster. There's another bill out there called the Tim Hart Act. Tim Hart was a smoke jumper, died on a fire, okay? This bill would be completely comprehensive, that would change wildland firefighters for the better across this nation. This would be like the end-all, be-all. The end-all, be-all. But it's just, unfortunately, I wish I could get it passed by September 30th, but the way things work right now, I can't see it happening by September 30th.
What's holding you back? Like, who are the opposition?
It's big. It's really big. It's a big bill. It's been introduced in the Senate and the House. It was introduced in the previous Congress, but once Congress leaves and there's a new election, you have to reintroduce everything. Everything's off a clean slate. So now what we're looking for is not only to people to support the Wildland Firefighter Paycheck Protection Act, but we want people to support the Tim Hart Act and get more co-sponsors for that. The more co-sponsors we have on the more likely it is to go to committee and get through all that process and get us, the scores and how much it costs. Like, it's big. It has pay in there. It's got mental health. It's got benefit stuff for retirement. It's got temporary buyback of time for folks that they can retire a little bit sooner. It's got mandatory time off for vacation during the summer so that you definitely get the rest and recuperation that you definitely need. It's a huge bill that would be the best thing since sliced bread. that would be great. But right now we have September 30th. That's less than a month and 12 days at this podcast to get it passed. And we all know bills don't get passed that quickly. For us to get it through the Senate.
Well, you got the Juan and Chris bump.
There you go.
Union or bust.
Union or bust bump, so it'll pass.
Yeah.
What do you need us to do?
I need you to share the message. I need you to share the message, and you know, I thank you guys for bringing me on here, and like, at least I'm sharing what our men and women are doing out on the fire lines. And just so everybody knows, like, wildland firefighters for the Forest Service don't drive or arrive in red trucks. No. They arrive in green fire engines and green, like, what we call hotshot buggies, which are like, they carry 10 people, and they're green. That's just what it is. And they're not pretty. They're not clean either. They're usually pretty dirty because they're working a lot out on dusty roads. There's probably not a lick of chrome on there at all. So, yeah, they arrive in green trucks. Our mascot's Smokey the Bear. So
that's awesome.
Or Smokey Bear, as some people would say. But anyway, yeah, like, these brave men and women are working out there. They're doing fuels projects to lower wildland fires from happening, and they need to be recognized for that. And this is the time. It almost hasn't changed in almost 100 years of fire.
Damn.
I was think like all this cross pollination. You know, NFFE, you got IATSE. I'm a member of UFCW. It's like just the energy that you see right now in the labor movement. We talk about the approval of labor unions being 71%.
Right.
We're talking about firefighters here.
Yeah.
It's like if I was in Congress, I'd be tripping over myself to help.
Right.
Yeah. What's controversial?
Right.
That's,
and like like, you're going back to what you're saying, the movement within, like, the Forest Service, especially like my local 1650 that supports the Angeles National Forest, the San Bernardino National Forest, the Cleveland National Forest, the Sequoia National Forest, and the Los Padres National Forest went from 15 members to almost 500 in over a year and a half. That is huge. Huge numbers. And we're getting growth in, like, the DOD sector. The folks right here in local 919 that's off Camp Pendleton, they're growing bigger too. The folks that were in 2096 down there in the harbor, like, it is big. Like, we are gathering and gaining momentum across this nation for all working class people like yourselves and mine.
So, Steve, this is crazy. Like, to us, it's no-brainers. Like,
I know.
No-brainers to us. That's why we're inviting you on. But I think it's good, man. I think it's good that you're fighting for your guys. You were rank and file before. You were a firefighter, and now you work for the union itself, and you're, like, advocating for everybody to get better pay and benefits.
Yeah.
I like to end, like, episodes like this, unless you have another one. Like, any last words, any last messages you have for anybody listening to this? Because, we have fans, so...
Yeah. No, so the biggest thing I'd say is get involved, get plugged in, support your local union, and it's going to change your life. I wish I knew about it sooner. This is like an opening to a door that I had no idea about, and it's the greatest decision I've made in my career. I wish I was involved sooner. I wish I knew what was happening, and I knew that, hey, I could make a difference in my career, which is going to change my life, my livelihood at home. Like, that's, like, the biggest difference. Instead of trying to invent something on the side of the hill that's going to make me $1 million. That's not going to work. This is not going to work. But, get involved, get plugged in, support unions across this nation. And podcasts like this that are, like, fully, like, I'm here talking to you right now. That's great,
Oh, yeah.
You're one of us, Steve.
You're national.
Welcome.